My name is Rebecca, I'm 35, and I paid for my sister-in-law's entire Ivy League law degree only for her to publicly humiliate me at her graduation. Before I tell you how a single clause in a contract I wrote 7 years ago cost her the career I paid for and nearly led to a divorce, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. I'll read them after I get this off my chest. This story really begins about 10 years ago, when I married David. I was deeply in love. He was smart, funny, and on his way to becoming a cardiologist. I was a junior financial analyst with big dreams of my own. I'd just been accepted into a prestigious MBA program, a goal I'd worked toward for years. But David's medical school tuition and living expenses were staggering. We sat down one night, surrounded by spreadsheets and financial aid forms, and the numbers just didn't add up. So, I made a choice. I deferred my admission. I told myself it was temporary, that I'd go back in a few years. I took on extra projects at work, pouring all my energy into my career so I could support us. I became the breadwinner, the planner, the one who handled the difficult things. When our landlord tried to illegally raise our rent, David got anxious. He said, "Beck, you're so good with this stuff. Can you just handle it?" So I did. I wrote a letter citing city statutes, and the landlord backed down. I became the designated handler of all things confrontational or complicated. It was a pattern we fell into, and at the time, it just felt like we were being a team. I was proud to support him. I didn't realize I was setting a precedent for my entire life with his family. His family, they were another world. His parents, Eleanor and Richard, measured life in social status and appearances. His younger sister, Vanessa, was the centerpiece of their world. She was the golden child, destined for greatness, and her path was to be paved with gold. 7 years ago, that gilded path hit a pothole. It was a rainy Tuesday night. David was working a double shift at the hospital. The doorbell rang, not a polite chime, but a frantic, insistent banging. I opened it to find Vanessa, 18 years old, drenched and hysterical. Her mascara was a disaster, her face was a mess of tears and blotchy skin. She stumbled in and collapsed onto my couch. "They spent it," she wailed, her voice muffled by a throw pillow. "They spent my whole college fund. All of it." My heart sank. For years, all we'd heard about was Vanessa's college fund, this sacred trust that was meant to launch her into the stratosphere. "What do you mean, they spent it?" I asked, kneeling beside her. "The house in Aspen," she choked out. "They said it needed a complete renovation. A new gourmet kitchen, a spa bathroom. They said it was an investment. They told me I could just take out loans like everyone else." Everyone else? Do you know how embarrassing that is? All my friends are going to these great schools, and what am I supposed to tell them? That my parents blew my tuition on a steam shower? Her panic was real, but it was laced with something else, entitlement. Still, I felt for her. I knew the crushing weight of student debt. I remembered the dream I had deferred. And looking at this broken girl, I wanted to fix it. When David came home, exhausted, I explained the situation. I expected anger, or at least frustration at his parents. Instead, I saw a familiar look wash over his face. A deep, profound relief that this messy, emotional crisis had landed on my plate, not his. He put a hand on my shoulder, that gesture I'd come to know so well. "You're so good with this stuff, Beck. Just handle it, will you? You know I hate fighting with Mom and Vanessa. Handle it." There it was again. So I did. I sat down with Vanessa a few days later and laid out an offer. I would be her bank. I would fund her entire education. Her undergraduate degree at Barnard. Her law degree at Columbia. I'm talking tuition, textbooks, her Manhattan apartment rent, health insurance, even her bar exam prep courses. Everything. A blank check for her future. But I'm a financial consultant. I don't deal in handshakes, I deal in contracts. I told her we had to make it official. It wasn't about a lack of trust, I explained, but about the sheer scale of the financial commitment. This was a loan that would approach $500,000. It needed to be documented. I had my family lawyer, Marcus, draft the agreement. He's an old friend, sharp as a tack, and has seen every kind of family drama imaginable. He sat across from me in his polished office, tapping a pen on one specific section of the document. "Rebecca, this is an ironclad financial instrument, not a family agreement," he said, his voice serious. Clause 17, the Professional Conduct Clause, it's brutal. It stipulates that any act of public disrespect or intentional failure to acknowledge the source of the funding constitutes a material breach. If she triggers it, repayment of the full principal, plus 12% compounded interest, is due immediately. There's no wiggle room. Are you absolutely certain? It's a safety net, Marcus, I said. It will never come to that. When I presented the contract to Vanessa, she actually laughed. She held the thick document in her hands and fanned her face with it. "Oh, Marcus, you lawyers are so dramatic," she said, not even looking at him. She flipped past all the carefully worded pages. "It's just a formality. We're family." She uncapped a pen and looked at me with a dazzling smile. "Besides, I'll pay you back in a year or two, once I land a six-figure salary at a big firm." "This is nothing." She signed her name with a loopy, arrogant flourish and pushed the papers back across the table. And just like that, I became the secret architect of her success. For the first couple of years, it was fine. She was grateful, or at least she performed gratitude well. The calls and texts were regular. "Thank you so much for the rent money. Just got my grades, couldn't have done it without you." I felt good, like I was doing something noble. But the rot started to set in slowly. The phone calls became less frequent, and their tone shifted. "I need another $2,000 for a new laptop," became the norm. Not a request, but a demand. The first real red flag was the car. In her second year of undergrad, she called me, explaining she'd landed a prestigious, unpaid internship and absolutely needed a car to commute. It sounded plausible. I wanted to support her ambition. I co-signed a loan and helped her with the down payment on a reliable used sedan. A month later, I was scrolling through social media and saw a photo album she'd been tagged in. Title: Spring Break Miami. There was Vanessa, laughing on a beach, a line of shot glasses in front of her. The car was parked behind them, covered in sand. The timestamp was from the middle of her supposed internship. It was a lie. A casual, expensive lie. When I gently questioned her about it, she was a master of deflection. "Oh, that? We just went down for a long weekend. The internship is super flexible." Then came the shopping trip. She was starting to interview for law school internships and needed professional attire. I offered to take her shopping, with a generous but firm budget. She steered me away from the department stores and into high-end boutiques on Madison Avenue. She held up a blazer with a price tag that was more than my monthly car payment. "You have to look the part to get the part, Rebecca," she'd said breezily, looking at my own off-the-rack business suit with a hint of pity. "Think of it as an investment in my future." She put me in a position where if I said no, I was the cheap one, the one holding her back. I bought the blazer. The family dinners became exercises in humiliation. Eleanor and Richard, fresh off another luxury cruise I knew they couldn't really afford, would hold court. At one Christmas dinner, Eleanor turned to me and said, "It's so wonderful that you have your little business to keep you busy, dear." That was the same night Vanessa, flush with success from her law school acceptances, looked me dead in the eye and said, "Some people are driven to achieve, to really make something of themselves. Others choose a different path. A more limited one." I felt David tense up beside me. I saw his jaw clench. He stared down at his plate, cut a piece of turkey with surgical precision, and said nothing. His silence was an answer. It was a choice. He was choosing the easy way out. The absolute breaking point before the graduation, the moment I knew this was irreparable, happened at a university networking event. I'd been trying to land a major corporate client for months. The CEO was an alumnus of David's university, and he was going to be at this mixer. It was a huge opportunity. Vanessa, knowing this, invited me. I thought, naively, that it was a peace offering. I finally managed to get 5 minutes with the CEO. We were having a great conversation. He was impressed with my firm's portfolio. We were clicking. Then, Vanessa sashayed over, a glass of champagne in her hand. "There you are," she chirped. She looped her arm through mine, turning to the CEO. "Isn't she great? I'm so glad she could come." She then looked at him and said the words that torched my career right in front of my eyes. "This is Rebecca. She's just my brother's wife. Just my brother's wife." The CEO's professional smile tightened. The warmth vanished from his eyes. He saw me, in that instant, not as a peer, but as a tag-along. An accessory. He made a polite excuse about needing to find his colleague and walked away. The opportunity evaporated. I stood there, my heart pounding in my ears. I didn't make a scene. I just smiled, excused myself, and walked out. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. That was when I knew. The peace I had been keeping wasn't peace. It was poison. And I had been drinking it for 7 years. The day of Vanessa's graduation from Columbia Law was picture perfect. The sun was shining. The campus was beautiful. The Harris family was in their element. Eleanor and Richard were preening. David was beaming, his phone held up to record every moment. My parents, Margaret and James, sat beside me, looking proud but a little out of place in the sea of entitlement. Even David's Aunt Patricia, a kind woman I'd always liked, was there, smiling warmly. When Vanessa stepped up to the podium as a distinguished graduate, she commanded the stage. She was poised, confident, the perfect image of a future legal titan. "I have so many people to thank," she began, her voice resonating with emotion. She thanked professors and friends. Then, she fixed her gaze on her parents. "Most of all," she said, her voice catching perfectly, "I want to thank my parents. For their unwavering support. For their incredible sacrifice. For giving me the freedom to succeed, no matter the cost." Eleanor dabbed a perfectly manicured finger at the corner of her eye. The crowd ate it up. Then, Vanessa's eyes swept over the audience and, like a heat-seeking missile, they found me. "Unlike some," she said, a subtle, sharp shift in her tone, "who chose a different path. A more limited one. My parents taught me to dream without limits. It was a bullet. A perfectly aimed, publicly fired bullet designed to wound. She hadn't just forgotten me. She had intentionally, cruelly, used her moment of triumph, a triumph I had single-handedly financed, to declare me, my life, and my choices as less than. In front of everyone. David, lost in his brotherly pride, leaned over and whispered, "Isn't my sister amazing?" In that moment, something inside me didn't break. It froze. It turned to steel. I didn't look away. I met Vanessa's triumphant gaze, and I raised my glass in a slow, deliberate toast. She frowned, confused for a second. But I just smiled. A calm, serene smile that didn't reach my eyes. She had just breached the contract. The game was over. And she had no idea she had just lost. The celebration dinner that night was a blur of self-congratulation. I listened to Eleanor tell everyone who would listen that achievement just runs in our blood. I watched Vanessa accept praise and gifts. I was a ghost at the table, a silent observer, my smile never wavering. The next morning, David went to the hospital for his rounds. I went to war. I sat across from Marcus in his office. He took one look at my face and simply said, "So it's time." "It's time," I confirmed. "She willfully and publicly violated Clause 17. He leaned back in his leather chair. "I have to ask you again, Rebecca. Are you sure you want to execute this to the fullest extent? We served the notice of breach. If she doesn't comply within 30 days, we file the suit. Simultaneously, I can draft the letters for the professional conduct review boards. This isn't just getting your money back. This will have severe, lasting consequences on her career." "She made her choice, Marcus," I said, my voice as cold and hard as the marble on his desk. "Now she can live with it." For the next 2 hours, we assembled the arsenal. The signed contract was on top. Behind it, 7 years of evidence. Every wire transfer. Every receipt for tuition, rent, books. The loan documents for the car she'd lied about. The credit card statement from the boutique where she'd guilt me into buying her a designer suit. Screenshots of every demanding text, every dismissive email. And finally, the crown jewel, the high-definition video from David's phone, with a professionally transcribed, time-stamped copy of her speech. The binder was 3 inches thick. It was the story of my servitude. That night, alone in my home office, I finally allowed myself a moment. I picked up our wedding photo. I remembered David whispering to me on our wedding night, "It's you and me against the world." A tear escaped and traced a path down my cheek. When did it become me against his world? I put the photo down. The mourning was over. The resolve had set. The legal notice was sent by certified mail the next day. It was a dense, terrifying document, citing breach of contract and demanding immediate and full repayment. The principal of $387,000. The compounded interest of $91,632. Total due, $478,632. Payable within 30 days. The first shockwave hit 2 days later. It was a series of frantic knocks on my front door. Not a ring, but an entitled, insistent banging. I opened it to find Vanessa, her face pale, the certified mail envelope crumpled in her hand. "What is this?" she gasped, shoving the papers at me. "This is insane. It has to be a joke." "There's no joke, Vanessa," I said calmly, not inviting her in. "It's a contract. You're a lawyer. I assume you know what a contract is." "You're destroying my life over a few words in a speech," she shrieked, her voice rising. "It was just words. Families say stupid things." "It stopped being just words when you cashed the checks," I replied. Then the phone started ringing. It was Eleanor, screaming into the phone. "What have you done to my daughter? After all we've done for you, welcoming you into this family." The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. The final showdown happened that evening. David came home, his face a mask of fury. Vanessa and his parents had clearly gotten to him first. "Rebecca, what the hell have you done?" he yelled, throwing his briefcase onto the floor. "My mother is hysterical. Vanessa is talking about some crazy contract you tricked her into signing. How could you be so vindictive?" I didn't yell back. I was done with yelling. I walked past him to my office and retrieved the binder and the USB drive. I walked back to the kitchen island where he stood, fuming, and placed them in front of him. The binder landed with a solid, undeniable thud. "I didn't trick anyone, David," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "She's a Columbia-educated lawyer who chose not to read a document. That's on her. And this isn't about vindictiveness. This is about consequences." He scoffed. "Consequences? For what? A silly speech?" For being a little ungrateful? You're tearing this family apart over money. What about forgiveness? What about the family inheritance we'll all share one day? That was it. The last straw. Inheritance? I said, my voice dripping with ice. Let me show you the last 7 years. I opened the binder. I didn't speak. I just pointed. Page 1, the receipt for the car she used for a Miami road trip. Was this a silly speech, David? Or was it fraud? I flipped the page. The credit card bill for the designer suit. And this? I kept flipping. Page after page of rent checks, tuition wires, Venmo requests for textbooks. His eyes widened, his anger faltering. Then, I plugged the USB drive into his laptop and clicked play. I made him watch the whole speech. I saw his face change as he heard the words not with a brother's pride, but with a husband's ears. I saw the moment he finally, truly understood the depth of the public humiliation. His face crumbled. The rage was gone, replaced by a hollow, sickening realization. He sank onto a stool, staring at the screen. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with a dawning horror. She doesn't have the money, Beck, he whispered. It was the only thing he could say. No, I said, my voice flat. She doesn't. But neither did we, when I gave up my MBA so you could become a doctor. The difference is, I earned it. The consequences were immediate and brutal. The prestigious law firm where Vanessa had an offer didn't just rescind it. They sent her a formal letter stating that her offer was on hold pending a full ethics committee review of her character and fitness to practice law, prompted by information they had received. She was radioactive. The salary she'd been counting on was gone. Aunt Patricia, horrified by what she had learned from a shamefaced David, did the rest. She didn't gossip. She simply expressed her profound disappointment to her closest friend on the country club board. The story of Harris family hypocrisy spread like a contagion through their elite social circle. Richard was quietly asked to step down from a committee chairmanship. Eleanor's phone stopped ringing. Their carefully constructed world of appearances cracked right down the middle. Vanessa sold her car, her designer clothes, everything. She moved back into her childhood bedroom in her parents' house. The last I heard, she was working as a paralegal at a small firm that handled slip-and-fall cases, making just enough to cover her court-ordered monthly payments to me. David slept in the guest room for 2 weeks. The house was silent and cold. Then one night, he came to my office door. He didn't have any excuses left. I heard what she said at that Christmas dinner, he said, his voice thick with shame. I heard her. And I did nothing. I heard her at the mixer. And I did nothing. I was a coward. I let them treat you like that because it was easier than standing up to them. For 7 years, I chose the easy way out, and you paid the price. It's not just about the money, is it? No, I said quietly. It never was. It wasn't a magic fix. But it was the truth. It was the beginning of a long, painful conversation that might, someday, lead to a real marriage. Or a divorce. I wasn't sure yet. In the months that followed, I focused on my own life. My business boomed. I finally had the capital and the confidence to expand. And I took the first payment from Vanessa and used it to seed a foundation. A scholarship in my grandmother's name, for first-generation college students who knew the meaning of sacrifice. At our first fundraising gala, I stood on a stage. I looked out at the crowd, at the hopeful faces of the first scholarship recipients. People often speak of freedom as something that is given, I said. But I've learned that true freedom is something you must build for yourself. It's built on a foundation of integrity. It's built by keeping your word. And it's built by honoring the sacrifices others have made for you. David was there that night. He stood at the back of the room, alone. He didn't approach me. He just watched, and for the first time, I think he was finally seeing me. Not as the handler of difficult things, but as the woman who had built her own life, on her own terms. We had a long way to go, but he was finally looking in the right direction. My final act in this saga was a quiet one. I made a large, anonymous donation to a legal aid society that helps people fight predatory contracts. I turned the weapon that had been used against me into a shield for someone else. That felt like the final word. Not revenge. Not bitterness. Just balance. Justice. The freedom that comes from closing a ledger for good. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to share, but I felt like I had to. My question for you is this: have you ever had to make a difficult choice between keeping the peace in a relationship and standing up for your own dignity? Let me know in the comments below. And if my story resonated with you, please consider giving it a like, subscribing to the channel, and hitting that notification bell so you don't miss what I share next. Thank you.